Thank you for joining me on stage. As you know, it is our 50th anniversary, and our theme this year is resources, resilience, and relationships. And I think as NGO organizations, we have all felt the pinch, just as business has. And so we're going to talk a little bit about past, present, and future today. NWT and Nunavut, you are celebrating your 50th anniversary this year as well. And the partnership and connection between all three of our organizations is critical for the furthering of mineral exploration and mining in the North and in BC. What do these milestones mean to, we'll start with you, Kenny, your organization?
Let me start off by saying I think we've done a better job now of collaborating as a pan-territorial approach. But we've come a long way in 50 years in mining in general, mineral resource exploration, everything. I think there's still a long way to go, but the way that we are approaching the federal government now, the way that we're collaborating across territories and provinces is a lot better. I don't think anything's perfect. I think our regulatory regime, especially in the North, it's world leading, but it's not perfect. There's lots of lessons that you guys have learned over here in Yukon that we could benefit from. And there's lots of lessons that we've learned that you could benefit from. So that collaboration, I think, is probably the biggest advancement we've made in the past few years.
Okay. Laura Lee?
Yeah, I would echo that, honestly. We all have lessons learned, and we don't really need to learn. I think what we needed to learn is we don't need to learn them individually. That sharing those experiences helps each of us grow in our own way. And, you know, people are very connected to the land in the North. To Kenny's point, we have world-leading legislation, but it's very new, quite frankly. You know, there's always lessons learned as you change things with good intention, and you know, as we look back at it now, there's room to tweak. And you know, as a Yukon, we're moving into a legislative review of our Mining Act, and that's, you know, it's a really big deal. It's a very old piece of legislation, but hopefully, as we work and grow together, we'll be able to share lessons and take from what we've learned and move into the next 50 years with stronger, better pieces of legislation that actually work for all of us.
So AME is also celebrating an anniversary this year. It's our 110th anniversary. And so there's a great deal of history and lessons learned. And, you know, the one thing I have to say is that I am so thankful to the self-proclaimed old-timer members, of which Jerry Carlson is somewhere out here. He's the chair of our old-timers committee. They are the folks that really started AME, well, not started because they weren't around 112 years ago, but they're really the folks who have made AME what it is today, and dealt with so many of the challenges that we've had over the years, and showed the modern generation the path forward and how it can be done, and educated us on a lot of those lessons that we, and certainly I, was not around for at the time. But you know, on the point of collaboration, I think what amazes me every time we all get together as a group, and I say it about the three of us, but nationally as well, is that, not shockingly, we all have the same challenges, regardless of what jurisdiction we're in and what area we're talking about. And generally speaking, those challenges are all happening at the same time, meaning the same year, give or take. And so not only the lessons learned from each other, but the day-to-day challenges that we're facing, the day-to-day opportunities, and how we can work together to advance those, has been a real pleasure as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know we're all competing for the same investment dollars, and I know that's we could get very pitted against each other in that space. But in times like COVID, I think we all realize, like, we really do have to lean on each other. And I'm the rookie here in the room, so I'm glad you guys are there and I'm here. But what would you say have been the key players who have been shaping the industry and drove these types of changes? Kenny?
Always throwing it at me first.
Yeah.
I would say industry has changed tremendously in my career. I'm not an old man by any means, but the way that industry is engaging Indigenous people, Indigenous organizations, has drastically changed from when I started in industry. I would say that Indigenous landowners will be the next change in mining. I see I'll say a push. We're in the midst of a new Mineral Resource Act in NWT as well, where they're legislating or proposing to legislate impact benefit agreements, where industry is going a different way. They want equity participation. I think that Indigenous landowners will be the next revolution in the mining cycle.
Not oddly enough, we do have some of the same conversations going on right now in the Yukon, and I couldn't agree more. It's not unusual for legislative and government processes to be catching up. And I really hope we're able to turn that where Indigenous landowners, and in our case, Indigenous governments in their own territories, are more of the decision maker and more of the equity partner. These agreements are important, they're critical, and they've been the only way industry's been able to step up and continue to operate respectfully and meaningfully in territories. But I think they're only one piece, and I think we would be remiss to not continue to advance the concepts and the opportunities that exist in those territories.
Yeah, leadership is a fascinating thing. It's incredibly multifaceted, and we're all member-based organizations, and I really think that the change is coming from our membership because we operate on what our membership asks for and needs at that time. And so that's a big part of our leadership, and where I think our voices come from is the direction from our members. And directly, our members are leading, whether that's the major mines or the junior exploration companies. They're changing how they work on a daily basis, and they have many different influences from conversations that they're having with their local partners, larger conversations that are happening in the news. And we just touched on some of the EDI challenges, some of the protests that we've seen over the last few years as well. All of that changes the conversation that our industry collectively has. And from a leadership perspective, we try to absorb all the voices that we're hearing from our membership and direct it in a way that can be impactful when we're talking to government and advocating for where this industry needs to go in the future.
Absolutely. I'm going to move our...
Bree, we actually didn't answer the question. I think we sort of subtly did, but I think what I'd like to say, we kicked off this year with a Yukon First Nation Chamber of Commerce a joint event with our event, and I think we have to say that it is for sure in this moment, the real shaking changes are coming after a result of many, many, many years of work, and we're seeing, First Nation governance stepping up and coming to the next level. So I'm going to say that is probably one of the bigger movers and shakers of our industry in the moment.
What do you think we could do better? As organizations, I know as an ED coming in, we're always struggling to, how do we serve our members better? How do we move industry? How do we, advocate? So starting with you, Kendra, maybe.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing for me, is listen. I think we all get very busy in our day-to-day lives, and we push ahead on the priorities that we think that we have, and we don't necessarily always take the time to stop and ask, have the priorities changed? Do we need to have a different conversation? And what are the challenges that are coming from all of you so that we can go in the direction that we need to go in? I think the overall direction is a really positive one right now, but there's a lot of listening that needs to happen, and whether that's to the First Nation communities or whether that's to the membership and what they're hearing, I think we can listen more.
Yeah, I would echo that entirely. I've recently been introduced to the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? Sit there, listen to the priorities, and I think as an industry, the quicker that industry realizes that First Nation, Indigenous people make their decisions based on values. Once they get their heads wrapped around that, that's where there will be a transition.
Marley?
Yeah, and I think I would just add to that, ask the question more frequently. You know, we're in this world where we do a 5 or a 10-year plan, and things are changing every 6 months. We're way outdated. We really need to be asking ourselves more frequently. The world's changing really fast, let's be honest. And the last 2 years has been a real example of how we've had to pivot and learn and change in real time. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to ask ourselves more often. Because if we're going to shift and move quickly into a green economy, this is going to come at us as fast. And we're going to have to ask and listen more frequently, and we're going to have to do that to have the tough conversations that are going to have to be had to make that happen. So I think we listen intently and we ask ourselves the question more frequently.
Yeah, I think COVID is, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but it feels like it's been one long year, not 2.5 now. So I completely agree. The dialogue needs to be more consistent, not every 3 to 5, or in NWT it's 5 plus 2. So you're only engaging on a land use permit every 5 years. That dialogue should be constant. You should always be moving things forward.
Maybe just add 2 pieces that we hear a lot. One is around public engagement and public influence of how we as associations can help to influence public and the general public. We have a huge skills shortage right now, and needing to reach out to some of those kids who are in elementary school, who are in high school, to come and join our industry it comes down at the end of the day to public perception and how we act and how we present ourselves. So I think one of the things we can do better is really talk about what it is that we're doing and talk openly and be proud. Each and every one of us should be proud of what we're doing and shouldn't be scared to talk about that. I think the other one is really our relationship with our First Nations. I think we can do a better job of that as well, and I think we're trying really hard, but we don't necessarily always know that. Well, we don't often know the path forward, and so sitting down and having that conversation very openly and honestly, and asking those questions of what needs to change and how it needs to change is a piece we could do better as well.
Thank you. No, that's great. Now that I have that out of the way, I can pit you guys against each other and start. So what are some of the differences? I know regulatory-wise, process-wise, we all look, you can see similarities, but we're different for sure. So what are the differences between jurisdictions, regionally, nationally, and how do you think we compare on the national and global scale? That's a loaded question, yeah.
Well, I'll start because we have one piece. Obviously, we just talked about it with Scott up here. We have DRIPA implemented in British Columbia, and although that's a really positive thing, and we really do look forward to seeing the future of that, it causes a lot of uncertainty right now in our permitting process because there isn't necessarily a very direct laid out process of what needs to happen to get a permit, or what kinds of conversations, or who you're having those conversations with. Probably very different than the territories. We have 215 First Nation groups in British Columbia. There are lots of overlapping territories. Boundaries aren't settled. I think we have a handful of First Nations that are treated, and so there's a lot of unsettled territories, which causes a lot of complexity in the decision-making process, and trying to determine which way to go when you're just uncertain. So I think that's a big challenge in our permitting process. And again, I go back to, it comes down to asking questions and trying to get an understanding, and get an understanding from all of the groups that are involved, so that you're making sure to cover all those bases and talk to everybody.
I think for us, so I'm the president of the Chamber of NWT and Nunavut, which are completely different in their regulatory worlds. NWT, we've been engaged by Sweden, Denmark on, they want regulatory reform. They want to mirror what our regulatory regime. There's a lot more that goes into regulatory considerations than just the regulatory. NWT has a couple of settled land claims, but largely the land mass is unsettled. And when you're looking at investment dollars, that's uncertainty, and dollars won't come into the territory. Conversely, over in Nunavut, one settled territory, one landowner that, depending what region you're in, can be very progressive, can be very conservative in their development approaches. Regulatory-wise, I said it already, I don't think we have a perfect regulatory regime. There's definitely attenuations that should happen. And actually the 2022 federal budget came forward and said they allocated some money for regulatory reform. So there are things that are changing, at least over in our world. Nunavut's going through a land use planning
Exercise.
yeah, exercise. It's probably the best way to put it, because it's supposed to be done now, but it's going to be done in 2027, just the way the pace of government. But we're constantly having dialogue on regulatory reform, which is, I suppose, encouraging.
So I guess where the Yukon, we're probably sort of the flip of that, right? In that most of our traditional territory, most of our First Nations are settled, and we have some governments that now have been operational for several years. So we have varying degrees of maturities of governments across the territory. We have a number of, we have certain areas where there's a lot more mining potential. We have a fair bit of overlap, but nothing compared to British Columbia. We have quite a different regulatory regime, all trying to accomplish the same things, but it is separated out through independent agencies as opposed to either one agency or a one window approach. So there are complexities within all of that, and you're trying to move one project along in the territory, and you're first into the environmental assessment piece, and you're trying to get people focused on that piece, and then you're moving into the regulatory, and then that's a different piece, and trying to socialize that and help people understand what the differences are between the two. And then finally, you have a water licensing process where in the other two jurisdictions, all those processes are happening through one window. So, I've been in all of the permitting side of things, and the theory behind the one window is great. It's not always as smooth as it sounds. But there's just a little more certainty that goes with that. So I think we're a little disadvantaged if we don't get better aligned, and we've opened our legislation. I think part of the problem is we have varying ages of legislation over top of one another. So that's a complexity within itself as well. And so hopefully, I'm optimistic that I'm very optimistic in the way we're engaged currently in the legislative review, with a very, very heavy relationship with the First Nation engagement on that side as well, that we'll find our way through some of these things and have it be more smooth in the future.
One thing I will say, and I can't speak to BC's legislation and regulatory regime, but the North, it's all the same problem. Wherever we're smashing our heads against the wall, you can go over to Iqaluit, they're smashing their heads against the same wall. The parallels and the complexities that you feel you're facing now that we're collaborating a lot more between our chambers, you realize how that same problem is the same, and you don't need to learn the same lesson that Yukon's already learned, or that they're dealing with in Nunavut right now. Here's how we dealt with it in the territory, or in NWT. It's a good platform moving forward. Here's some attenuations, but this is our pan-territorial approach now is really helping move things forward.
I couldn't agree more. So now we're going to move towards the future. I know all of our organizations, in an ideal world where humans are not involved and there's no egos in the room, we could move and advocate and move things along a lot faster. But to keep industry moving in the right direction, what do you say are the challenges that need addressing in the short term? And what are the roles of each of your organizations in this? And then I'm going to double down on that and bring in MAC and PDAC, but let's just start with what your organizations can do in the future?
I'll start with that one. I see a big push on Indigenous equity participation. I said that in the beginning of this, but I truly think that's the way things are going to go. My day job, our company did the mining for the Nechalacho Rare Earth Project over in NWT, and it's through our joint venture with the YKDFN, Yellowknife Dene First Nation. The first time a First Nation-owned company has done the mining on their own land. And I can tell you from Cheetah Resources is the proponent there, the client, they would have loved to have had the First Nation own the land, develop the mine, just sell them the ore. That's it. I think that's the way industry is going to turn.
I can't say I can completely disagree in the north, and the pace things are moving. If you would have asked me this 5 years ago, I'd say we all had been excited about the concepts, and certainly in my career, we've talked about it multiple times with multiple nations. I think there's, we're starting to see nations invest in things that are feeding minerals. We're starting to see people invest a little more. I think it's coming along, but I think the true understanding and bringing it full circle of how to work on the land, use the land, be part of the land, and still extract. To fully understand that, we do need to have more First Nation ownership, where it's not building trust is important, and I think companies have done many have done a bang-up effort in trying to get there, but it's the true investment involvement, and then you're on the same team. Honestly, we're no longer pitted against each other. We have the same ideals and the same outcomes looking for, and we have all the right inputs inside of making those decisions in the moment, in the construction, in the operation, and I think in the long term, it will take away from the push-pull and just bring it full circle.
So I'm perhaps a little different than my two colleagues up here in that I represent the exploration folks who are working in BC. We also have a mining association in BC, so they look at a lot of the operations and producing mines. So from an exploration front and looking back over the history, and I know there's questions about looking forward, I'm not honestly sure that we have any short-term challenges in front of us. I think they are all long-term challenges. And I say that because looking back over the history, we are still having the same conversations, albeit in a slightly different context than we were having 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They still center around permitting, number one. That's our biggest challenge, and it's more around, again, it's exploration permitting. So it's around timelines and it's around certainty of the conversations that need to happen and how that permit is going to advance through the process. Skill shortage has always been a challenge. We have now 1,200 mineral exploration companies based in Vancouver. We need a lot of people to support those projects, let alone the 17 producing mines that are based in British Columbia and those that are expats, I suppose, from BC going to other places. So, and right now we just heard there are 6 students who are registered in UBC's mine engineering program this year. So there's a massive amount of skill shortage out there and knowledge transfer that needs to happen. We also have a huge population amongst us that is retiring in the next few years, or retiring as much as any geologist ever retires. And that knowledge again needs to trickle down to the next generations to be able to take over. And then, touched on by my colleagues here, the First Nation component and the conversations. Again, that's, historically 50 years ago, this was not a piece that we were doing well. It's not a conversation that we were really having, but it will be a conversation for forevermore. And so again, not a short-term piece, but certainly a long-term piece that we need to work our way through and find what that path forward is.
Okay. What do you hope for our industry in the next 50 years, and how do you think we will get there? You can all bring out your magic 8 balls and start shaking them right now. And
That's a tough one. I think I would echo what Kendra was talking about, the skills shortage. I remember when I graduated high school, there was a huge push on trades. Trades pay well. It's a good hard living. Fast forward 10 years, and we need doctors, architects, lawyers. So it moved. There was a shift in this is in Yellowknife, but I feel like that shift was nationally from blue collar to white collar, and we need to recognize that going to university isn't, you're not better, smarter because you go to university. You're just choosing a different career path. And as soon as we can normalize that, and it's not, I'm smarter because I have a university degree, or I'm getting this just for the sake of getting it. In NWT, if you have a degree, you can get a job with the government. You can make the same amount of money in trades, but I think we need nationally to make a shift back to trades pay well, trades are a good living, and showcase what you do in trades, because some people just don't know. I think COVID kind of exacerbated the skills shortage, where you have the mentors of the industry retiring early. I'm doing this because I enjoy my job, but I'm not going to go to work if I'm going to get COVID. I don't need to work anymore. I've got enough money. I'm set, but I enjoy what I do. If we don't shift back to skills training and development, as a nation, we're going to be hurting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I won't double down on that because it's very true. What I'd like to add is, someone asked us this same question: what will it look like in the next 50 years? Wow, again, 5 years ago, I think I would have had some confidence in projecting this. Now, I think if we can project 5, we'll be doing great. Things are changing at such a rapid pace. The world is changing. The needs are changing. Our industry is changing dramatically. And I said to someone the other day, we're sitting at these tables talking about legislation. We're talking about, and we are, for the first time maybe in forever, the real environmental need to have greener, cleaner economy is very much aligned with the need to have mines. So it's a weird shift that's happening. We're coming into brand new ground. What we set for our pace and our expectations nationally is going to require things to come into fruition at speeds we're not used to working with. So I really hope, and I'm an optimist, so I'm going to take out the geologist in me and say that I think we are going to, sorry, geologists. I think that we are going to take the hard groundwork that we've done, and the North is leading the way in this, though it's always scary to make that next step. I want to believe that all the groundwork that's been laid and the relationships that we've been working on building and, how things have shifted are going to take us to a place where we can go through this and make the right decisions that are respectful for the environment, for the peoples, and still get us to where we want to go, to a better place. I'm really hoping the next 5 years we come together like we have been forced to do through COVID.
So you stole my thunder. I was going to say I'm going to pull out my inner geologist, but I'm going to take it in a different direction. We're still at a rate of approximately 1 in 10,000 projects that ever becomes a mine. So I would like to see in the next, hopefully less than 50 years, that rate drop. I would love to see it 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 100 even, depending on how big we want to dream. But we've got some phenomenally clever and ingenious people in this industry that can create some pretty neat things from a technological and innovative perspective and think about things differently. And if we can find some new techniques to help us search undercover or to look at different rocks in different ways and be able to find those deposits and either rule them out or rule them in more efficiently, I think that would be a pretty neat thing to see in 50 years.
Absolutely. Well, we spoke about relationships and resources, and I truly hope we now see the resilience in our industry and all these issues that we have discussed today, and that some of my colleagues have earlier, and many of the talks that we've had already. Just persevere and keep working the problems, because at the end of the day, we can't give up on this, and we all still want to maintain our standard of life. We want our kids to stay here, and we want our kids to have a good quality life, and in order to do that, we got to work together. So I appreciate all three of you being up here. I know we're a little bit early for time, so I do want to open it up to the floor. If you want to put any of these individuals on the spot, excluding myself, you're welcome to do that. So there are any questions, comments, concerns, issues that we may have forgotten to talk about today? Nothing.
There's no other future tellers out here? Come on.
It's like The Price is Right. You can just start throwing numbers out and we'll pick a winner. Okay. Well, I do want to take the time then to thank the three individuals up here. Two of you are volunteers, and this is not your day job. So I really do appreciate the time that you take to mentor people like me. Kendra, you've been, incredibly helpful the last year that I've took over this job. And if anyone had told me what I was walking into, I may have thought twice. No, kidding. Maybe. But I do appreciate all the time that you guys have put in. And I look forward to tonight. I want to let all of you know that tonight we have the Yukon Women in Mining 10-year anniversary reception. It is hosted in partnership by Fireweed Metals, and the location is at the old fire hall on Main Street. So if you need directions, let me know. Otherwise, give these people a round of applause, and I'll let them go early.